We will continue with a new nation today. In today's story, you will hear how the colonists in Massachusetts formed a militia to fight the British soldiers. A militia is an army of ordinary people, not trained soldiers. The militia were also sometimes referred to as Minutemen because they were known to be prepared to fight in a minute's notice. Let's find out what became of these Minutemen or militia. After the Boston Tea Party, King George sent thousands of British soldiers to Boston to make sure the colonists obeyed the king's orders. They swarmed the streets of the city in their fancy red uniforms with shiny buttons, earning themselves the name of Redcoats. They carried weapons with them everywhere they went. This made the people of Boston very angry. The city no longer felt like home to them. They did not know whom to trust. Spies spread out all over the city. British soldiers disguised as colonists and colonists disguised as British soldiers. There was lots of whispering in the streets as people kept secrets from one another. It was not very pleasant and even a little scary. Paul Revere was a silversmith living in Boston. As a silversmith, he was kept quite busy making and repairing silver dinnerware, candlesticks, and jewelry. A sign with a silver pitcher hung outside his shop on the town square. One day, the door of his shop flew open, and a friend rushed to Revere's side. The two men were both members of the Sons of Liberty, the group of patriots who had emptied tea into Boston's harbor. Ever since the Boston Tea Party, the colonists of Massachusetts had been hiding weapons, gunpowder, and cannonballs in neighboring towns. The British, afraid the colonists might be planning to attack them, captured the weapons whenever they learned where they were hidden. Now, as the two men huddled together in the back of Revere's shop, his friend whispered that the British were planning to raid the colonists' storehouse of weapons in the town of Concord. The British were to travel that night, he said, but nobody knew whether they would march there by land or choose the shorter route and sail on a boat by sea. The patriots knew they must somehow warn the militia in Concord. Revere asked a friend to spy on the British to discover the soldiers' plans. Then he arranged for a signal to be given, a secret code to let him know the answer to his question. His friend was to climb up the bell tower of the Old North Church, light one lantern, and hang it in the belfry if the British were traveling on foot by land. Revere told his friend, but if they're traveling on a boat by sea, hang two lanterns. That night, after dark, Paul Revere left his family and crept down to the banks of the Charles River. He quietly rowed his boat across the river to a spot where fellow patriots waited with a horse, saddled and ready to go. Mounting the horse, Paul Revere waited for the church signal, ever so patiently. It wasn't long before he spotted a light in the tower. One light, then two. Ah! He said to himself, just as I've thought. They've chosen the quickest way by water, where fewer people are able to see them. Then I shall go by land, arriving before they do. Tipping his hat in thanks to the patriots, he sped away. As he galloped through town along the way, Revere shouted to the colonists in their beds, "The redcoats are coming! The redcoats are coming!" All around him, shutters were thrown open as people began waking in the middle of the night. When Revere reached the town of Lexington with word of the approaching British troops, men hurried from their homes, joining one another with their muskets in the middle of town. These men, known as Minutemen because they were expected to be ready to fight at a minute's notice, slept with their muskets and gunpowder beside their beds. At dawn, the British reached Lexington. The Minutemen were farmers and shopkeepers, volunteers for their country, not trained soldiers. They looked ragged next to the well-dressed British soldiers, or redcoats. In the confusion of the early morning hours, a shot was fired. Others fired back, and fighting continued throughout the morning. Finally, Minutemen were able to force the British to return to Boston, firing at them from behind rocks, trees, and fences all along the way. To this day, no one knows who fired the first shot that day. Nerves had been on edge since the Boston Tea Party, so it's not surprising that guns went off. That first shot was the beginning of a long war between the British and their American colonies. It is known as the shot heard round the world because not only did it change life in the colonies, but it also changed things across the ocean in Great Britain. That long war became known as the Revolutionary War. Could it be that the shot heard round the world rang out so loudly from the Massachusetts colony that it actually reached George's ears that April morning? I don't know, but we know that the effects of it were felt greatly, and we'll find out more about those tomorrow.